I'm challenging myself to complete a puzzle and its video in 24 hours. That means between opening up a brand new document for the design and clicking render in the video editor, no more than 24 hours may pass. I'm not counting video export time because that's completely out of my control and doesn't need my input at all. The puzzle for this has to be fairly small and relatively simple to solve since the print can't take long and I can't spend multiple days formulating a solving strategy. I'm actually going to make my own version of Grant Andersen's Super 1x2x3, which I've been interested in for quite a long time. It's basically a super floppy version of a 1x2x3, where you can make a 90-degree turn on the tall axis and continue making turns. Mechanically, it's equivalent to this plus 1x2x3 I reviewed years ago, but I think the Super 1x2x3 will be more interesting to solve because you can't turn the little circles on their own, meaning manipulating them is a bit more effort. The 24 hours I have do include the time I spent writing the script, so let's get to the design. The first step I take in any puzzle design is to create the base shape. I use Diogo Seuss's very convenient Onshape toolkit, which includes a polyhedron generator. I chose standard 19mm cubies for this puzzle, which involved creating a 38x38x57mm prism and then just extrude removing 9.5mm from both sides of the prism on a single side axis. The next step was to start working on the cut sketch, which is something almost every puzzle that you design in 3D software will need. The major exception I can think of would be super basic extension mods, but even most of my extension mods need a cut sketch. Anyway, the concept of a cut sketch is that it's essentially a snapshot of your mechanism. After completing it, you revolve it around a central axis, and then cut the solid with it to create the cuts of the puzzle. As a side note, I took some time here to generate the small wedge parts by essentially rotating one of the big corners and then cutting off anything that extruded outside of the limits of the puzzle. The cut sketch on a 1x2x3 is pretty simple, typically. But later on, for this one, I actually had to make a lot of adjustments to it, because it turned out that having the extra face turns available with the super floppy aspect of it meant there was significantly less room in the centers for the mechanism to fit. It was very convenient to be able to just go into my sketch, adjust some measurements, and then have the software recalculate everything, resulting in the updated model. This only works to an extent, and if it involves more complex calculations, the results might actually not end up as you expect. But here, because this was fairly simple, it all worked out. Once the mechanism was complete, I started the mildly tedious process of adding fillets to all of the part's edges. It is typically considered bad practice to leave any 90-degree sharp edges in your final design, so you should be filleting everything. Of course, you always have to consider your specific mechanism and application to determine what's a good radius for each edge. You may notice that on the outermost stickered edges, I often apply a larger fillet than on other edges of stickered faces. This is purely for aesthetic reasons and is actually a technique I borrowed sometime in the past from Jonathan Byrne or NK Cubed. I think I might have started doing it with the O2 cube. I also made sure to add clearances where necessary in the mechanism, and then finally started designing the center cap. The parts are now all printing, which is going to take 3 hours, and I decided to make the most of the print time by designing the sticker template now. I typically make the sticker template using extrusions of the part faces, because when adding fillets I find it easier to do on 3D extrusions rather than 2D sketches. So I extrude the faces, fillet where necessary, and then create a sketch out of the resulting extrusion faces. The most efficient way to do this is to create only one of each unique extrusion, fillet it, and then mirror it so that way you don't have to make extra fillets. The little wedge corner stickers are going to be really small, but I still think they're going to be able to stick just fine if I sand the surfaces well enough. Anyway, now that the sticker templates are more or less done, I still have plenty of time left before my parts finish printing, so I'm going to get my vinyl cutter and cut out all of the stickers for this puzzle. A 1x2x3 mechanism is generally one of the simplest types of puzzles to assemble. You just put together the two halves independently, slide them next to each other, and screw the centers together. This variation was a little bit more annoying to assemble, because the small wedge pieces kept falling out from the top and bottom. But eventually, using just delicate movements, I was able to get everything together. And of course, prior to stickering, I sanded all of the external faces. Unfortunately, during the print, I encountered some tangled filaments, which basically means that eventually the extruder can't pull hard enough to get filament off the spool. This meant that a couple layers of each corner just didn't have as much material as they were supposed to. The parts looked okay enough though, so I continued assembling. Stickering was also really straightforward. The only tricky bit was getting the tiny semicircle stickers to adhere well to the puzzle. Sanding the sticker faces smooth helped a lot, and other than that, it was pretty much a matter of precision. Frankly, I should have used a smaller blade, which would have made it easier. I guess the bigger blade was closer by, and I just instinctively started using it. In case you're wondering, I typically use Oracal 651 sticker material for just regular stickers on 3D printed puzzles. I find that it has really good adhesion, especially if you first sand down all of the sticker faces. And then to cut the stickers, I almost never hand cut stickers. The few times I've tried, it's always turned out horribly. So I use a Silhouette Cameo 3 vinyl cutter. That's an older model because I've had it for several years now. It's also the bigger one. I believe the Portrait is a smaller one and it takes 9-inch vinyl instead of 12-inch. But obviously if you're considering a vinyl cutter, do your own research. What I have heard though is to just not get a Cricut machine. In the community, Silhouette machines are generally viewed with higher regard. Having a vinyl cutter is a massive process improvement over hand cutting your stickers. If you make puzzles, especially 3D printed ones, on a regular basis, and you have it within your puzzle making budget to get a vinyl cutter, I say go for it. It's really one of the best tools you can have in this hobby. In the morning, I realized that some of the layer shifts had affected the corners significantly worse than I initially thought. It was at a point where you could pretty much peel the mechanism off the rest of the corner. This was unacceptable, so I reprinted the corners. Of course, due to work, I couldn't do much work on the puzzle much until 5 o'clock, but I did find some downtime to disassemble the puzzle, reassemble with the new corners, and transfer the stickers over. I also edited together some of the footage I'd recorded thus far, to save time later on. Recall I'm doing a 24-hour challenge to design, build, film, and edit this puzzle. I believe I'm doing okay on time, but I do think I would have had a better time of it on a weekend day rather than a weekday. That wasn't an option though, unfortunately. Generally, I think the Super 1x2x3 turned out okay, although after trying to scramble it, I realized the corners and wedges were a bit looser than I'd like them to be. Normally this wouldn't be an issue, as I just reprint some parts with tighter clearances, but I was under a time limit for this puzzle, so I couldn't just do that. I think if this was a regular 1x2x3 it would have turned just fine, but in this case the regular corners are significantly heavier than the wedge ones, meaning gravity will just pull the big corners downwards and the small wedge corners upwards. Overall, still a completely usable puzzle, and I doubt this will take long to solve anyway. It should look pretty cool when it's all scrambled up, kinda like a miniature floppy cube. So let's go ahead and find out. Alright, here we are solving the Super Floppy 1x2x3. I don't expect this to take very long, but I do have a self-imposed rule, which is if a face consists only of these two small wedges, I'm not going to try and manipulate them like that. I'm going to have to manipulate them using these large pieces. So that should make it a little more interesting. Yeah, I guess first of all, let's just get it solved into its original shape, which shouldn't be that hard. Okay, and I can already see an issue, which is that this central piece is turned by 90 degrees, so I'm going to actually have to do this and then figure out how to manipulate everything so that I get the stickers on the right side. Okay, so now at least all of the stickers are on the outside of the puzzle. Okay. So, I'm not actually that worried about these outside parts right now. I'm more worried about these inside ones. So, I'm gonna have to solve this and this. So, let's see about that. My self-imposed rule is actually making this a bit harder because normally what I could just do is turn this 180 degrees and do some algorithms, but I can't do that. I have to use these large pieces, which are already solved. Alright, here we are, the puzzle is solved. Now that was just one solve. You can actually encounter other situations, like for example, you solve this entire first layer, and then you have to do an algorithm to solve this last layer because it's not totally solved. But overall, I think this puzzle definitely packs well above its punch. This is just a 1x2x3 mechanism with a bit added on, but it's a lot more interesting than you'd expect, and for just a really simple puzzle, it's definitely surprisingly interesting to solve. But yeah, that's all of the main filming complete, so now I'm going to start the edit process. You know, all the usual, so I genuinely have no idea if I'm going to make it within the time limit, but I'll let you know when I'm done with it, and we'll see if the 24-hour challenge actually worked out. Alright, so at this point I've finished up editing everything, except for this clip obviously, which I'll add immediately after, and let's see the time. Alright, it is 9:19, so yeah, I'd say in 6 minutes I can wrap this up and import the clip and hit export, so that's not a big deal. I saved a lot of time by editing what I could before actually taking this puzzle outside, but I still didn't really enjoy having to edit a video within a time limit. So if I do timed challenges in the future, maybe I'll exclude the editing portion because, I don't know, I don't like being on a time limit with that. Finish it in my own leisure. But yeah, Super 1x2x3, I wish it turned a little better, but the only fault is mine. Obviously links in the description if you want to buy this, or if you want to print one for yourself. There's a public Onshape document with a design by Mason Hynds that I'll link you. It's not my design, and frankly I have no idea how it turns, but it is there to peruse, and you can clone it and improve the design if you so wish. But anyway, I gotta keep this brief. Thank you all very much for watching. Next time I'll see you will be the Puzzle Advent Calendar in early December, so that's part of why I wanted to do this challenge, to leave myself some extra time for that, because those videos always take significantly longer to make. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a great day.